Okay, I suppose we will slowly get started. These are quite optional anyway, so people will dip in and dip out. I should say before we even get started at all that it is perfectly fine if you need to go, if there's something else you need to do. Also, I trust you to your comfort level, whether you want to be seen or not. It is fine either way. Um, you know, for various reasons, one can choose either way, and it's super good. Hi, everybody. Wait, there we go. My hand is disappearing. I know Zoom is funky and different than being in person, so we'll navigate that as best we can. I'd like to start by saying, if there's something you need to say, just jump on in. If it gets too chaotic, then we will find Zoom's, I don't know what it is. It's like hand up or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? It's got like a little, let's find it. Is it reactions? Help me here, people. Raised hand, thank you. And that's in, Adam, and that's, which menu did you locate that in?
That's in the participants area.
Okay, it's in the, because for me, I actually don't have that. So I guess my hand is always up or something like that.
Now you're the teacher.
Yeah, so what? I'm the teacher. Okay, so we'll start by just saying stuff and hope that it doesn't get too crazy. I should also say that it's really important to me that throughout the semester, if you feel like you have questions, and I think Lexi, you heard this like 2 hours ago, so I apologize. It's important that you can ask questions at any time of me or of other people, and they can really be about any aspect of fiction writing. You might imagine that we may be having a day where we're talking about plot, but the truth is that plot is related to everything else, like character or setting. And so you may be struggling or thinking about some aspect of your fiction that isn't exactly what we're talking about, but is related. Bring it up. It's important. Every aspect of creative writing is sort of interrelated in that way. And I guarantee you that other students will have similar questions. They may not be struggling or thinking about those questions at the same times. Light bulbs go on our metaphoric heads at different times, but please ask. If something is confusing, ask. I really want this to be open that way, and I don't want you to be, sort of sitting there for 10 or 15 minutes just kind of baffled. Baffled is not always a good way to be. What I'd like to do today, I'm assuming, and I know because you all so eloquently filled in your surveys, that you've all read all of the basic materials. I'm not sure I want to re-go over them. I don't think it's a great use of our time, although I'll give a chance for questions. What I want to do is just kind of ice break a little bit. Some of the people here are in the online section. Some of the people are in the in-person section. Some people are in person but online. Some of you may be in the same section in person but never see each other because you're going on Monday day or Wednesday day. But I thought, creative writing is a formation of a community. We work with each other's work quite deeply. We have sometimes quite intense conversations about the world around us, since writing is also about the world around us. So I thought it'd be really good to just, say who we are a little bit. I want to do that. I want to give you some updates on logistics for the course. Aaron, I hope everything's okay. I can't hear your house's fire alarm. Please be safe. So some logistics that are just new to come up and give you a chance to ask logistical questions. I'll talk about the flow of the class a little bit. And then after that, if we have time, I want to just talk a little bit about writing in a large sense. The first couple of weeks, we're talking about idea generation before we really get into, the nuts and bolts of story writing. This is, I said, a class that will be on short stories and fiction in particular. There is some overlap with poetry and other forms, and that's fine too, and we'll talk about that. So that's what I'd like today to look like. Before I start, does anybody have any questions that are just so demanding that they have to be answered first that maybe I missed, that are like, will change your life if they don't get answered right now? No change your life questions. Okay, so first things first, I'll introduce myself. My name is Robert. You can call me professor if you want, but I prefer, if possible, to be informal about things. I go by he, him pronouns. and I will ask everybody when I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourselves. So please say the name you prefer and your pronouns if you feel comfortable saying them. I'm also want you to give 2 pieces of information, and we're already getting into a kind of writing exercise here. So when you give these 2 pieces of information, I want you to be specific and detailed. I want you to give 1 piece. Lexi, again, you're gonna have to come up with 2 new things or else I don't know what's gonna happen. I want you to tell me something specific and probably quite small that made you crabby over the summer and something that made you really happy. So I don't want, like, the world is a mess is kind of abstract. That is not specific. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, my favorite tennis shoes got holes in them and I couldn't go to the store to get new ones. Something on the level of that specificity that happens in kind of a small way that is already teaching us how to build character, is already teaching us how to think about questions that we might ask about people and what they do and how they live in the world. So what I'm going to do, what is one thing that made me crabby? One thing that makes me crabby is that I've lived in sweats all semester or for the last 3 months, and it makes me feel kind of dirty because I feel like I'd probably need new sweats after 3 months. How many of you have lived in sweats for like the last, nobody? Me, totally. You know, one thing that's made me really happy is I've gotten to spend a lot of time in Michigan this summer, on Lake Michigan, and I've just gotten to go to the beach, and I learned how, this is gonna sound silly to everybody, but I learned how to successfully put up a beach umbrella without it flying away and hitting everybody else in the face. So for me, this was a really big deal because then, you know, nobody's gonna get me in trouble. So those are 2 things. If it's okay with you, I'm gonna, I don't know any really good way to do this because you keep moving around on my screen. So going in order is hard, but I'm gonna try. I will call on somebody and I will try to then, I'll tell the next person who is on next. So you have a couple seconds to think about it. So the person I'm gonna put in the hot seat here is Billy because Billy's in the top left corner of my Hollywood squares. Willow, you will be after that. So you're up, Billy.
Okay, so one thing, I'm Billy. I use he, him pronouns, although it really doesn't matter to me what you call me. One thing that made me crabby over the summer was that I kept finding myself spending more money than I was taking in. But the happy thing is that I had my job, despite it being still around a lot of people in a high risk environment for catching the coronavirus. And to go further on the crabby thing, it's that I was buying a lot of tabletop RPG stuff and I did not have the money for that.
Yep. So if we were doing this in an exercise, Billy, which we're not, you know, the first thing I'd ask is sort of, I'd keep asking you questions. You know, how much money are we talking, millions or tens? What was the job? You know, because every time you get to a specific thing, more possibilities come from it. So that was great and I loved it, but just, I'm already thinking fictionally through everything you're saying.
Sure.
You know, because how many of you, well, I can't see hands, but for those of you who play tabletop RPGs or any games, right? If you meet somebody for the first time and if they tell you A, they've spent thousands of hours playing Animal Crossing, or B, they've spent thousands of hours playing Call of Duty, you're gonna intuit many different things about them right away, right? So the details all of a sudden already giving us all kinds of good stuff. So thanks, Billy, that's awesome. Willow, and then Anonymous Alligator, you're next.
Hi, my name is Willow. I go by she, her, and I apologize. The green screen isn't really working on my computer, so I kind of just left it at a beach. And one thing that made me really crabby about being stuck in quarantine was I found myself getting really stuck in the same routines of like staying up late, getting up late, watching YouTube all day long, like, and really just not doing anything day to day that felt fulfilling. And I think one good thing would be that I learned how to be a little more grateful for things that I do have, like the fact that I'm close with my family, that made me just really grateful that I didn't have to be like stuck with people that I hate day to day. And yeah.
Great. And, you know, and you're going to see that I'm going to be turning this towards writing it all the ways. You know, the reason that I'm recommending that you have a journal is because anything is fodder for ideas, for stories. You know, for many of us, we were, I think, Willow, the word you used was stuck, but we were all in these kinds of social pressure cookers through the, you know, if we weren't alone, we were with family, we were with friends. And that's how good fiction is made, is because you're put in situations that you're not prepared for, you're not necessarily comfortable with. And they come out in really interesting ways. So thank you, Willow. It's super to think through those things, especially family things. All right, Anonymous Alligator, and then Brian.
Oh, yes, that's me. Hi, I'm Anonymous Alligator. No, you cannot know my real name. I use they, them pronouns. The thing that bothered me over the summer, many things, but if I had to pick one thing, it was that the mask, one of the masks for like a custom-made dress that I ordered, I lost it a couple days ago, and it was a really nice mask because unlike the other mask, it was a little larger because it was handmade, so it fit much better. But then I lost it. I don't know where it is.
I'm sorry.
And then a good thing that happened was that I will have every opportunity to talk about this. I got a lamp, a kerosene lamp, from a yard sale, garage sale over just a couple days ago, actually. My friend buys a lot of things, so, and then he was just like, hey, there's a yard sale. Do you guys want to go? And we're like, yeah. But then he's like, oh, I'm not going to go. I already went. So I'm like, okay. And then I went there and I bought the kerosene lamp.
Nice. And those of you who have taken fiction classes before know that, you know, one of the hallmarks of fiction is that people want stuff, right? If you don't want things, it's usually pretty boring. And it's amazing because sometimes we want things really badly, even if to other people they're not that important things. Not saying that a lamp is not important, but that we have these like very strong desires that are wrapped up in the objects around us. And that can be really useful to think through. All right, Brian and then Keyshawn.
Hey, I'm Brian. He, him will work for me. That might be interesting to explore a different way some other time, but I was somewhat crappy because I spent the summer with a roommate of mine who I know well, and who is difficult to remind for writing ideas because he is not very reflective about the things he likes. So when he talks about things that he does or likes or dislikes, I go, oh yeah, well, why? He's like, oh, I don't know. And there's just nothing. But on the other side of the coin, I was pretty happy because I think I learned a lot this summer about being okay with not making progress. Like there wasn't a lot of progress to be made, and especially as, you know, someone making art, you know, sometimes you get a writer's block or you're not really coming out the way you want it to, and you don't need to kill yourself over it.
That is a great lesson. And we'll talk about the writing process a lot. You know, the more I want you to think about language as something to play with, the easier it is to not feel like it's something you have to master, right? This is not, we're never going to get it right. I'm not going to get it right. We're going to play around with it a little bit. That's really, really helpful. What is your background, Ryan? Your Zoom background, not your background.
Oh, I'm not sure. A while ago, my desktop had like the Microsoft like switches through random like landscapes, and I found like an Imgur album that was just a whole bunch of them compiled together. And
Nice.
so this is one of them that I liked from that.
Cool. All right, Keyshawn and then Lexi.
Hi, my name's Keyshawn. I go by him, his pronouns. One thing that made me crabby over the summer was I took like multiple summer classes just to basically catch up with my major. And
Yep.
because of my poor time management skills, I ended up falling behind really bad.
Yikes.
And I guess one positive would be coming out of those summer classes, my time management skills got better, and I was able to actually like handle things pretty okay going into the semester. So
Nice. Yeah, it's like you think you're going to learn and preserve a certain skill, and you wind up learning how to manage your skills. It's not a bad thing. All right, Lexi, and then Jack.
Hey, hi, I'm Lexi, she, her pronouns. Something that made me crabby over the summer, the coating on my favorite saucepan started chipping away, so I had to get rid of it. Something that made me happy, I started sharing writing back and forth with a close friend whose writing I'd never been able to read before.
Everybody think about how easy it was to visualize that saucepan and how we can get stuff out of that, right? I can imagine a character kind of, trying to clean it, I can imagine them getting upset with it. They're kind of scratching at it. What was the food? They're never going to eat that food again that made it stuck. What was the food that was it like the last food?
I actually don't remember. I was just annoyed that I lost the pan.
Yeah. Well, that's fictionalization, but also I'm imagining a character that puts this up on the wall as in like the Hall of Fame of saucepans. So this is your active imagination. So Jack and then Andy.
Okay, I'm Jack. I use he, him pronouns. Something that annoyed me over the summer is I ordered a hoodie and I ordered it from Japan, and shipping from Japan is delayed. So I'm not getting that until probably Christmas at best because they had to throw it on a boat. So I don't even know where it is in the ocean. So that's going to take a while.
Can you tell us what hoodie?
I ordered a hoodie from a webcomic that I read, and that's what the background that I have for Zoom is from. They made hoodies from the hoodie the main character wears, and I was like, oh man, this looks really comfy. So then I bought it, and then right after buying it, there's like, so shipping's delayed from Japan, and we got to throw it on a boat. So I've just been waiting for the entire summer for it to get here, and I won't get it till Christmas at best, based on both the boat, but also being stuck at RIT. I can't just go back home whenever I want. So gonna have to wait a while for that. But on the plus side, because of summer and just being trapped inside, I had hours and hours to grind Overwatch and Monster Hunter. So I just know life both those games.
And for gamers, most of us may not know what it means to use the verb grind there, but it's a great verb. That's the specificity of verb that I'm wanting to see. I used to have an obsession with people who speed ran games. I was really interested in why one would do that. All right, Andy and then Aaron.
Hi, my name's Andy. I use he, him pronouns. This summer, the worst thing I had to do was move out of my old apartment, and there was no AC or fans going on. So that was just a week of sweat. A good thing I got to do was I got to go to Maine and got to swim in a lake for the first time, which was really nice.
Awesome. And I want to reiterate, I think about crabbiness. Think about that emotion. So it's less like big things, but it's probably like, I got a splinter on the day that, whatever. Maine is beautiful, I hear. All right, Aaron and then Connor.
Yeah, hi. I'm Aaron, he, him. Something that was good for me over the summer when I found out that I would still have my job for my summer co-op working for the DoD in Maryland. That was fun. It was because I wasn't sure until the Thursday before I was supposed to start whether or not I was actually still had it. So
yeah,
that was pretty good. Something that made me crabby, I guess, the fact that when they told me I couldn't telework and it's an hour and a half commute each way.
Ouch.
So that was a long commute every day.
Yeah, seriously. Yuck. Connor, and then and I, you're gonna have to tell me if I'm pronouncing that right, but you can get to that in a minute, but you're up next.
Hi, I'm Connor. He, him, things. Can you hear me? Am I
Yep, you're good.
audible?
You are.
One thing that made me crabby was my house became the spot over the summer, so everyone's at my house all the time up until like 5 in the morning every night. So yeah, that type of life. And then something that made me really happy was I'm moving into a house for the first time. Like I'm getting my own place with my friends and my roommates. I'm starting this next year off right.
Nice. Laundry. You have laundry?
I do.
Oh my God.
I got everything. It's amazing.
I destroyed all my clothes the first time. Well, anyways.
Oof.
Yep. Lycan and then L.
Hi, my name's Lakin. It's pronounced Lake and then
Got
in.
it. Thank you.
My pronouns are she, her, but I don't really care. Something that made me crabby over the summer was the height of my bed, because every time I would get out of it, I would scrape or bump my knee. And then something that made me happy was decorating our backyard, and we got specifically the lanterns that we got for our backyard to watch the sunset.
Nice. Sounds pretty. I would like a description of that. All right. Elle and then Ryan.
Hi, I'm Elle, they, them. And so I ended up moving back home with my parents this summer, even though it was supposed to be like the first summer. I wasn't planning on doing that in a while. And I got kind of crabby because they were like pretty constantly in my personal space. But over the summer, I also got the opportunity to try a bunch of different like baking and cooking things, which was really nice.
Yeah. Can you imagine writing a story that was sort of structured with all the things that were being baked as little openings to scenes, something like that? I will encourage you all not to think linearly in terms of these things. So structures like the things one baked are really useful. Yes.
I know a story like that. I had to read it. I had to read it for school. It's called like Water for Chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a magical realism story.
Yep.
And like the beginning of every chapter, every couple chapters was the recipe for a different thing that the character is making.
Food is powerful. Food is powerful. All right, Ryan, and then I'm getting confused because for some reason some of your names disappear from my screen at times. So I'm looking at somebody who's got kind of a green shimmery background. On black, yes, exactly. You are next. So Ryan, and then I'll find out who that is soon enough.
All right. I'm Ryan. I use he, him pronouns most of the time, but you can call me whatever. I'll figure it out. One thing that made me really crabby over the summer was that my bedroom door's like handle broke, so it wouldn't close properly. So when I left my window open, because I don't have central air, it would slam my door just constantly, either against the wall or against like the frame. So it was really frustrating to wake up every like 15 minutes just to my door slamming on its own, and it kind of creeped me out a little, but that's okay. And the one thing that made me pretty happy over the summer was since I live pretty out in the middle of nowhere, I had this little like water feature in my backyard, which fell into disrepair and really is more of a pond at this point. And a little baby rabbit fell into it, and my mother and I found it, and we were able to kind of get it out really safely and warm it back up and dry it off and send it on its way.
Nice. I want everybody to notice that a small detail like a broken door offers all these opportunities to have tension, right? Because it means that people can come in uninvited more easily, but it also means that things are invading, right? Bugs, light. So it's the small details that often, are really useful in fiction for creating scenes of uncomfortability. All right, so I'm gonna say green shimmery, and then Jeb, you're after that.
All right, hello, I'm Caroline. I go by she, her pronouns. One thing that made me crabby over the summer wasn't technically in the summer, but it was like during all of the quarantine stuff. So I was in Iceland over spring break studying abroad before this happened. We had to go back early, and we would have seen the Northern Lights, but I didn't get to.
Is that your background?
Actually, my background's a final piece that I made for that class.
Nice. Was there a happy in there? Did I miss that?
Oh, no, there wasn't happy in there. I didn't get to that. What made me happy was that I got to continue doing a D&D campaign with my friends.
Awesome. Cool. Jeb and then Carl.
Hi, I'm Jeb, he, him pronouns. So this summer I lost my favorite pair of laces. I was doing some construction work for my dad and they just got destroyed in the process. And then on a happy note, my family adopted some goats this summer and they've been very fun to interact with.
Awesome. Carl, Paul, are you there?
Me?
Yeah, you're up.
Oh, okay.
And Isaiah, you're next.
Carl, I go by he, him pronouns. And one thing that made me crabby was reading the hundreds of emails about these unprecedented times we're in. And one thing that made me happy was that although I was back in my childhood home, I had my own room for the first time.
Nice. And if I was going to get snickety, I'd be like, okay, so what was it that made you unhappy? And then, you have to dig into this stuff. Well, it's some kind of tone. It's the fact that, that every time you got an email, something happened, whatever it was, that's real specific. Like, yeah, for me, it's like how things are worded and not the quantity. But after a while, you're like this. Isaiah, and then Devin.
Hi, I'm Isaiah. One thing that made me crabby over the summer was I tried to change my diet, and I kind of forgot the stock of stuff I have in my own apartment compared to my mother's house. And I bought a lot of food without any seasoning at my own apartment. So I assumed it was there because my mother always had it. One thing that made me happy was even though coronavirus hit, I was still able to do some work in my field, and I got an internship this summer. So
Congratulations. Side note, everybody, with your hands, if I can see you, what is your chaos level right now? If 1 is everything is super chill and 10 is everything is out of control, what's your feeling right now? Let's see, this is a big mix. I wasn't expecting so many 2s and 3s. All right. My last class, it was all 2 hands.
I'm stuck in quarantine, so there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here.
So it's lack of chaos through inaneness.
Fair enough. But at least, sometimes there's a relationship between sort of anxiety and chaos, and to be able to sort of sit with that it's a beautiful skill if one can get it. All right, where was I? Devin, and then people are moving around, but let's do Elizabeth after that. Elizabeth, you I don't know, because I don't see my second screen. Did you hear the terms of what we're doing?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so Devin, then Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Devin, they, them. For things that made me crabby, I would say, the thing that's still fresh on my mind is just dealing with RIT, honestly. For the past, month, for example, they'd been harassing me, daily to have everything planned out and everything, and asking me to have things that I can't get, also the testing and stuff. I'm in Ohio. I'm still in Ohio right now, actually. And in Ohio, they asked us to get the testing pretty last minute. And in Ohio, you can't really get it for 2 weeks, really. And there's also the fact that you also have to schedule it too. And then also the fact that I didn't know if I would be going back or not. And not really having a way to do the self-isolating thing because I was still on the list until they dropped me off they dropped Ohio off the isolation list right after I already canceled my housing.
Yeah.
So it was just a mess, basically. For the one thing that was positive, actually just got a last-minute co-op for the fall, and I'm still taking this class, of course. This my one class I'll be taking, and I'll be doing it's actually through RIT IGM.
Nice.
And I'll be editing a website for a VR mystery game. So I'm very excited about that.
Sounds good. Welcome. All right, Elizabeth and then Shannon.
All right, hi. My name's Elizabeth. I like they, them pronouns, please. Something really frustrating that happened over the summer and is still happening now is that mosquitoes love me. I don't love them back. My entire body itches. But then something that's really nice is that since everything has been closed internationally due to quarantine, I was able to hang out with my online friends more, especially through playing Animal Crossing. So that was really nice, and I appreciated that. Yeah. 'Cause I could stay up late and not have to worry about scheduling.
Yeah, that is nice. It strikes me, you were talking about mosquitoes, that all of us probably have heard people talk, like everybody has these fanciful ideas about who gets bitten and who doesn't get bitten. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like somebody's like, well, you've got the sweetest blood, or you're this. And you know, some of that kind of magical thinking can be really great in fiction, because sometimes when we're kids, we believe that stuff, right? We believe that.
It's awful.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm a human. I was in the Adirondacks a couple weeks ago, and I think I was more welts than human for a couple days. All right, Shannon and then Adam.
Hi guys, I'm Shannon, she, her pronouns. I'm not actually in this class yet. I'm still on the wait list, but like fingers crossed I get in. Something that made me real crabby over the summer. So I'm a barista at Starbucks, and only like a month ago we had like a mandated you have to wear a mask to come in our store policy. And what makes me crabby is the number of people who continuously come in and harass like me and my coworkers about it, as if we are personally going to change the company policy for them. So that's been annoying to deal with people. But on a positive note, I've been able to keep my job. They increased my salary for continuing to work through quarantine, which was great. So I got like lots of extra benefits. I got to bring home extra snacks to my puppy. So nice. Yeah, it's got ups and downs, but it's overall been okay.
You know, it strikes me in my papers, I'm sort of encouraging you to think about characters' relationship to social and political structures. And I'm not talking about writing like giant epic, you know, sort of moralistic novels, but these little things like having a conversation with somebody at the Starbucks where they're, you know, making fun of you at a mask, that is the intersection of the personal and the political in very clear ways. And that's what I'm encouraging you to think through, is how we have these moments every day that are the intersection of health, politics, ideology, environment, personality, because I'm guessing, Shannon, that you couldn't say anything back.
Not really. We have a de-escalation policy, so the best I could tell them was you could just leave the store.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, these are the little things that big things grow out of. And this is what, you know, I want you to, in your journals and in your writings, to be thinking about how these small things are actually not small at all and are deeply interwoven with us. All right. It's getting confusing to me because we're on screen too. So if I've got, well, I'm just going to keep going and we'll cruise through. I know this takes time with 40 people, but I think it's really important so that we see each other's virtual faces and just, you know, get a sense that we're not bots. Adam and then Serena.
Okay, so I'm Adam, he, him pronouns. Something that was positive over the summer, one of my favorite games of all time, Super Hot, came out with a sequel, and it was free to anyone that owned the first game. So that was a nice gift to randomly just have all of a sudden. And then something that bothered me is me and 4 friends, we started a game dev company, and there are so many fees associated with it. They just keep finding ways to make you pay more and more money, including like having to still publish in a New York paper because all New York business law is based around New York City specifically, and they don't think about anywhere else when they make New York law. So that was frustrating.
Yeah. And I can imagine stories coming out of, you know, you have somebody who's trying to achieve a goal. One thing that's fundamental to fiction is this: you're trying to achieve something and there are obstacles in the way. This seems like a very Kafka story to me. Who is, Adam, who is the they there in They Keep Stopping?
Wait, can you?
Yeah, you said they have so many fees. Who is the they?
Oh, just like, I guess they is just like general like business stuff like required for law.
Got it.
Just like to legally be a company.
Got it. Understood.
Legal fees.
Yep. All right, Serena and then Kenzie.
Hi, I'm Serena. I use she, her, or any pronouns. One kind of thing that made me crabby over the summer was that one of my coworkers at my job was kind of homophobic, so that was annoying. And then something good that happened over the summer was that I got to get a whole bunch more succulents and cacti, and they're still alive right now.
Excellent. They can hang out. I think this one's dead. Oh well. Okay, super. Welcome. Kenzie and then Fortune.
Hi, I'm Kenzie. My full name's Mackenzie, but I mostly go by Kenzie. She, her pronouns. I guess like I'm trying to think of small scale things, but right now like the biggest big scale thing that's making me crabby is just I just transferred within like the last week. So I registered for classes on the day classes started. And it was just like such an overwhelming experience. And I guess like overall, the beginning of the summer was fine. Like I went outside and things like that. And I got to see a few of my friends from my old school. But I think just like the end of the summer right now, the transitioning and trying to like start school while school is starting has been like very overwhelming.
Yeah, it's really intense, especially transferring right now. Yeah. Welcome. Well, we'll try to make life easier and not harder. I'll do my best. Fortune and then Nick.
Hey, so I'm Fortune. First of all, is my mic working all right?
It is.
Okay, great. So he, him. One thing that had me super crabby this summer was these pigeons would land on my air conditioner at 5:30 in the morning and start cooing. And I could not get back to sleep after that. And it happened several times and it was just awful. And I'm not like an early sleeper, so I just did not get a lot of sleep those nights. But something happy was actually I got a freelance job translating. So it was just like a short thing, but that was really cool. And it was nice to get some experience in that field.
I love this image of like, I can imagine a character trying to get rid of these pigeons half awake with, you know, by throwing, once we had raccoons in the house and they came in through the doggy door and we wound up throwing rolls of toilet paper at them. So I can imagine that. That's awesome. Welcome, Nick, and then Forrest.
Hi, I'm Nick. He, him, or they, them works. One thing that made me crabby was listening to everything that Trump said over the summer, because that's a nightmare. And just watching that deteriorate did not put me in a great mood. But a good thing was not only did I get a job teaching kids game design.
Yeah, nice.
Online in like one-on-one Zoom sessions. They accidentally screwed up sending me a 3D printer so I could teach 3D printer lessons. The first one was broken, so they sent me a replacement. Let me keep the first one, and I fixed it. So now I have a free 3D printer.
Nice. You've got a comment about your background. What is your background there?
My background is old school RuneScape, the login screen.
Aha.
Because I have devoted my life to that MMO for years, and I can't exactly escape it at this point.
Got it. All right, Forrest and then Robin.
Hello. So I use they, them pronouns, and something that made me crabby this summer was not being able to go to any music shows, which is like one of my favorite things. And just having to stay home and not see any live music anywhere was pretty rough. I didn't like that. And I'm not looking forward to the next year or so or whenever when we can start doing that again. But something that made me happy was, in the meantime, staying in and hanging out with my roommates. I got more into tabletop RPGs again, which I haven't done since I was like 12 years old. So getting back into that as an adult has been a really fun process too.
Super, thanks. Robin, and then Zoe.
Hi, I'm Robin. One of the things that made me really crabby this summer was trying to wrangle my mother when we went to restaurants. She wanted to see how much she could get away with not wearing a mask.
Oh.
And she's 75, and it was just, she was cranky and I was cranky, and I just wanted to strangle her. Just put the dumb mask on so we can go into the restaurant.
Yeah, what's stressful for life is good for fiction.
Yeah.
Yikes.
One of the things that made me happy is I got a chance to go swimming. I haven't been swimming in years, and just splashing around, and it made me feel like a kid again. So it was a lot of fun.
Nice. Zoe, and then we're almost through. I think Justin, if Justin hasn't spoken, maybe you have. But Zoe now. You are muted.
Hi. I don't know if you can see I have my bunny with me. This is Ozzy.
Oh.
So one thing that made me frustrated this weekend, obviously I have this rabbit. He actually came from, I said this weekend, I meant this summer. I live on a little farm. We have everything from like emus to llamas and goats and chickens and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that really annoyed me wasn't necessarily a big thing, but we had some hens that went broody and they wanted to hatch some eggs, but they weren't good moms. So they kept getting off the eggs and kept not doing what they were supposed to be doing and leaving them. And that's just really frustrating because obviously like they're starting to develop the eggs and then messing them up. So it wasn't great. But then something that made me happy this summer, our dogs, or not our dogs, but one of our dogs is pregnant. So we are expecting puppies.
Nice. See, only somebody, I'm going to guess here that very few people would be using the word broody for, like, I wouldn't know the word broody. I think that's great language. I love that. But it's specialized language.
Yeah, so if anyone doesn't know, it just means that they want to hatch eggs.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll collect a couple eggs and then sit on them. And yeah.
Cool. Justin, have you spoken yet?
I have not.
Okay, and then Jared, if you have not spoken, you're after that. So just, yeah.
He, him pronouns. And something that made me crabby was definitely the mixture of having no AC and ice, and the parts, especially the part where the parts would take so long because shipping everywhere is delayed. So it was a good month where it was very hot and there was no relief. But one thing that did make me happy was it was just equally as hot, but I went out camping for the first time, which was really nice after being inside for so long. And it was with my friends, so we got to enjoy that. It was really nice.
Nice. All right, Jared.
I'm Jared. Something that was good was being able to see all my family and stuff, and then something that was bad was having to leave all my friends here.
Yeah, there's stories of leaving friends are really interesting because they're complicated because you miss them, but also you're going to something new. It's a nice thing to think about, if not a little sad. All right, who have I missed? If I've missed somebody, please just speak up now.
Hi, I came in late.
Yep, hi Tyler.
Hi. Okay, so something, first off, I'm Tyler, he, him. And something that made me crabby this summer was when early in the quarantine, a few friends at home who just wanted to hang out straight away. And then my mother hearing about that and saying, no, you can't hang out right now. So sort of being tugged in both directions by wanting to see my friends, but not wanting to upset my mom. And something that was nice this summer. Sounds kind of depressing, but I can't think of anything.
Well,
not to say that good things did not happen, but Yeah, best I
Right.
can think of is I did some writing. So
Sounds good. And what I'm encouraging you to do through the semester is to start small, right? And you might say, well, I was really bummed out this summer. It was not a good summer. Like these crappy things happened. But there's 24 hours in a day, and it's those little things that actually we can build stories out of. Like I'm having this weird moment where I'm sort of playing with my cactus, and it both hurts and is kind of nice and reassuring at the same time, and I can kind of pick it up. So, if you can't think of any, I'm not looking for you to be thinking global. The global stuff comes out of the small stuff. So it might just be that, last week you went to the farm and there were these unbelievably good blueberries or cherries because it was cherry season, or peaches because it's peach season. That's enough to start with. So I'm not putting you on the spot here, Tyler, but I'm wanting you all to think in these sort of micro moments, because we can take those moments and describe them in amazing ways, and they can stand for things that are bigger than themselves. But it's really hard to go the opposite direction. Nice cat, Forrest, by the way. Anybody else that I've missed? Okay. So thank you, everybody. That's really, really helpful. And I'm really happy to see you all here. I'm happy to get the semester started. I've been sort of waiting for it for a couple of weeks. Thank you all. Do you want me to, you gave me album suggestions. I actually wind up listening to them all. Do you want me to put up the list anonymously of all your albums that you're having me listen to?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Yeah.
All right. I can tell you that I'm just thinking without being cool or not cool of the last two albums I listened to. And I'll add these. And I'll tell you just because maybe this will help you weird with me, which is Tribe Called Quest's Low End Theory and Sonic Youth's Experimental Jet Set Trash and No Star. So I'm going through an 80s, 90s phase right now, but I'm really enjoying it. I'll see if anybody put up the same album. I don't think they did. All right, I want to switch right now. Here is everything. And when we have these Friday sessions, I'll remind everybody that they are optional, but we're going to get to business every other week very quickly. And we'll be usually talking about the stories we're reading. It's hard to write well when you don't read well. And so we'll be doing a lot of reading. And when we're reading, we're not reading exactly like we'd read in a literature class. We're reverse engineering these stories. How do they provide the effects they provide? So I'm going to really encourage you to show up on these Friday sessions as much as you can. I will record them and they are optional. However, I can't make you do anything. Logistics that you don't know about. Everything that's up on my courses right now, I think is most of the stuff for the semester. I think you're in pretty good shape going forwards. There might be a couple exercises that I haven't put up because I tend to wait to see how you're all doing to put them up. I customize them. But in terms of you knowing what is expected of you this semester, I think it's pretty much all up. I've added office hours, virtual office hours from Monday from 12 to 1, and I've re-uploaded your schedule and your syllabus to reflect that. But really, if you ever want to talk about writing, you can really consider my office hours to be whenever you want to talk. If you want to talk, just write me an email, and the best thing to do is to give me 3 times which you're available, and we'll set up a Zoom session. And I really want to encourage you to use that, because it could be any time in the semester where you're really sort of thinking through something, or it's just not easy, or you're stuck, or you want to run an idea by me, or something's come up that's delicate in class, or workshop. I really want to encourage you to talk to me. It's always confidential, obviously. The chat is going around about Discord. I have to admit that Discord drives me crazy and Slack drives me crazy because it's always making little bells in my head at 4 in the morning. But if you folks want to open up your own Slack channels, have fun. I don't need to know. I will try to, I mean, I know everybody uses Discord, and I know my courses is kind of stinky. But that's one of the reasons why I'm trying really hard to make things clear for you on my courses. If things are not clear on my courses, please let me know, or put it up in the clarification section, because just because I think something's clear doesn't mean it's actually clear. Okay, so I talked about office hours. Thank you for the survey. The flow of class is going to look like this. You've got a big project due in week 7 and a big project due at the end of the semester, story-wise. But you will be doing writing every week, some kind of writing. So what you'll be doing is sort of just building lots of ideas, and you might take something from an exercise and reapply it somewhere else. The reason I'm not having you write like 5 stories is because revision is more important than writing in many, many ways. And I want to see something, I want us to be able to edit, revise, workshop, expand, and to see where stories can go when you really spend a lot of time with them. So this is something that's very important to me. To me, revision is as creative as drafting, and we'll talk about that a lot. But that's the reason why you have 2 big projects. So even though you're going to be doing things every week, you can, if you're doing time management stuff, it's week 7 and week 15. Okay. Each week after week 2, we'll focus on a different element of craft. So those things build in certain ways. Again, things are connected. So if something else comes up, that's fine. But, so we will be sort of targeting certain things. I think and we have workshops, I think 2 or 3 times during the semester, and we'll talk about the workshops as we get closer. I'm guessing most of you have had some kind of creative writing workshop before. Is this where you hung out with other people and given your work in advance and talked about it and all this kind of stuff? If you haven't, we will go over that in detail, how it should be working out or how I'd like to see it work out. It is part of your grade to be participating in these workshops and writing really good feedback for your colleagues. And the reason for that isn't just to get you to participate, it's that this is another opportunity for you to look at somebody else's writing and see what is really powerful in it and what is less powerful, and then to fold it back, not only to articulate that, because if you can't articulate it, it's hard to do, but to fold it back into your own writing so that you're both helping out your fellow colleagues and you're saying, hey, I do that sometimes. Maybe I need to work on it, because sometimes we can see things outside of ourselves. You know how like, sometimes we'll say something to a friend and we'll be like, you're like this, and you don't know that you're also like that, but you can only see it in them because it's very clear. Same thing goes with writing. All right. Right now then, I want to ask, do you have questions about the logistics of the class, about the administrative stuff of the class, or about what we're going to be learning this semester? Anything on those topics, please speak up. Speak up, not right now. I'm not going to assume that just because you're not talking means that everything's crystal clear. If things come up, that's fine. But are things sort of clear? Are the materials sort of okay? Do you hate my face on video already? Yeah?
Oh, I'm just also very tired.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we're all tired. No, but I mean, it's also, this is the paradox of the syllabus, is that teachers all expect you to have it memorized, but most of it is completely useless until some point in time during the semester. Which is why I want it up for you and clear, because at least what's important to me right now is that you know where to find these things if they come up. Okay.
I do have a quick question,
Isaiah.
Robert.
Yes.
So for our 2 like stories we're going to write.
Yes.
Do they have to have a distinct ending? Like, I was thinking about writing something that could be further than a short story, so does it have to have a distinct ending?
That's a really good question. The answer is yes and no. And what I mean by that is these stories are not like you can write whatever you want. I will give you certain constraints, length, some other specifics that I want to get you to think about. You may envision your story as something larger, but it still ends on paper, right? So the purposes of, for the purposes of this class, you're writing something that is self-enclosed. And part of what a good story is the ability to wrap up. I mean, all of you have said something like, this was amazing, but the ending was kind of stinky, right? So Isaiah, I appreciate this desire to write things bigger, but I want you thinking in self-enclosed, and then we can talk about later how you would open that up to that longer space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. It's a super question though, because sometimes when we write stories that we don't know what the scope of those stories is as we're developing ideas. What I want you to be thinking through the semester is you need to be building the muscle of generating ideas and not knowing how big it is yet. Because I can say to you something like, I want to write a story about love, and I could write that, and it could be 20,000 pages, but it doesn't, it's completely abstract at this moment. I want you to be starting small and building out, rather than having a preconceived idea about where it's going to go. All right, other questions?
I do have a question though about the whole subject of writing thing. You said that like you didn't really want like genre fiction. You wanted stuff that like was kind of like not necessarily bound by a genre, is what I'm assuming. But can we still put fantasy elements into the story?
Yes. So this is a really sticky subject, and we could probably talk about it for weeks on end. I want to say a couple things here, but I want you to think about them not as my philosophy, but as these are the things we're doing in this course, just like in a math course, we'd be doing geometry or calculus or anything like that. I am asking you to focus this semester on literary fiction. And that focus means for you a focus on character, somewhat of psychology, somewhat realistic, but not necessarily, and a focus on language, good sentences. Now, that doesn't say anything about the borders between literary fiction and any other genre, right? Which are all the time, always present with us. And in fact, the first story we're gonna read, the Karen Russell story, is both historical and kind of surreal. So we're actually gonna be reading stories that are easily, I see you, Tyler, that are easily blurring these boundaries. What I don't want you to be doing, if you are, the issue here is that if you are adopting the conventions of what I'm gonna call pure genre, but that really doesn't make any sense.
I'm sorry, what?
Okay, if you are adopting the conventions of what I'm calling pure genre, which we're gonna agree doesn't exist, then you're not necessarily focusing on the things I want you to be focusing on for the purposes of this semester. So this is all to say, elements of genre are perfectly fine, but you always need to be coming back to the things I want you to be focusing on for this term.
Okay,
Ability
so
to, yeah, go on.
What? I'm sorry, what is it? What were you gonna say?
No, I'm listening.
Oh no, you're gonna say something, and then I said something.
I forgot already.
Okay. So what you're saying is that I can't include dragons.
Yes, if there is a focus on psychology, language, character. I will keep coming back to that.
There can be dragons.
Yes, there can be dragons. I will not mark you down for dragons. I am more interested in the character that is super interested in dragons than the dragon. So, you know, some of you might say, well, I want to write this piece about, you know, cosplay universe, and I want to write this piece that's like D&D. And I will go all Stranger Things on you and say, for the purposes of this class, it might be more interesting you if we think about why people are driven towards these things in the first place and what the social ecosystems of that universe are, rather than jumping into that universe. Does that make sense to people? Sort of. We'll talk about this a lot, and there is a lot of stretchy stuff in this. Okay, there were a couple of people who were raising their hands. I don't have a list. Where did it go? Can I see who put their... Help me here. Or somebody just jump in and speak.
If people like want to raise their hands, if they click on participants, then like it gives a list of options, and one of those is raise hands, and it also lets you see other people who, like all the people who are like have their hands raised.
Right, that's the part that I'm not seeing, is who has their hand. I don't see the little
So currently
hand sign.
no one's pressed it, but like
Okay.
if I did it, then
Okay.
now I have my hand raised.
Aaron, is that you that's speaking? Because we're on two screens, I can't see everybody.
Yes, that is me who is
Okay.
speaking. So
And did you have a question yourself?
no, I was just demonstrating.
Okay, Elizabeth, was that holding up your hand, or was that a hand
No,
to
I'm
speak?
just trying to air out my mess of hair.
Fair enough.
It's so hot.
Yeah. You know, the genre question is one that we could spend a lot of time on, and it's a good question. And we'll sort of have to play it case by case. There is, to be fair, no such thing as literary fiction that does not go into genre, whether it's romance or detective or sci-fi. They're very blurry lines. Let's start there. Brian, I recognize you.
Hello. So I guess I wanted to ask a little bit about the description you've given for literary fiction,
yes,
focused on, character and psychology.
Yeah.
That leads, I guess, in my mind, when I first read that, in certain directions, more in the like getting inside people's heads sort of way and talking about why and how people feel things. And then sort of in contrast to that, a lot of the examples I've heard are about, how physical objects, scenery, and sort of like setting can manifest those things.
Yes.
Are we looking for emphasis on the physical? That's kind of actually something I was planning to try to improve on, but
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're getting into like week 5 questions, which is awesome. I am not asking to talk about the psychological. This is really difficult stuff. What I'm not asking you to do is write stories in which characters are sitting at home thinking. The way that we get to character and psychology is by having characters interacting with the world, right? It's about the pacifist who, can't stand the slugs on their front lawn. But if you don't get them outside, you can't get there. So by having a focus on material objects and how characters move through the world and interact, it's hard to have tension if you don't have interaction, for example. That is one major way in which you get to representations of the states of our being, which is essentially what we're talking about. How do we live in the world? How do we think through this world? So physical description, and more specifically precise description, are what is going to be helpful to us. Now, if you could precisely characterize somebody's thoughts, that's also great and helpful. Why? One thing that movies are really bad at is internal states. Why?
Definitely my favorite. I guess as a writer, I've primarily written on more psychological aspects. So,
but here's the question: why are movies not necessarily as good as other forms at determining certain kinds of psychological states? I mean, we could fight a yeah.
Is it because it's a visual-based media and it's not as in-depth as something that's actually describing them, like dialogue
Connor,
within a story?
Yeah, I mean, Connor, you're getting at it, which is what we have with video or with movies is sound and image, right? And an image can represent a psychological state, but it's limited in the ways that it can describe a psychological state. Now, this isn't totally true, but I'm being stereotypical to make a point here. What words are really good at is getting at how our brains work, as well as descriptions of the outside world. But I think you could safely argue that a movie is better at describing a flower than a book is. Because when you're looking at a book, you're looking at a bunch of pixels on a screen. When you're looking at a movie, you're looking at a very direct visual representation of it. Does that make sense? I mean, we can fight about this, but that's the general thing, is that fiction is really good at getting at the ways our brains work, the ways that we work through the world. Kenzie, you're talking about Carver, and we'll get, and then Anonymous, Alligator, we'll let you after this. Carver is really a minimalist. Carver doesn't do a lot of really specific description. What Carver asks you to do is imagine the state of somebody by their physical actions and by what they say. And we should be so good with our language that we can get somewhere underneath that by what characters say and do. Right? Let's leave it at that. Anonymous, Alligator.
I actually took it in a more literal stance.
Yeah.
Is that most movies, the longest movie can be like 3 hours, but movies typically are an hour and a half. So there isn't really a lot of time to like really flesh out the characters, especially if there's a lot of characters or a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
If the movie isn't all about the own characters like personal psyche, then that might not be really analyzed all that much. But
Yeah.
with a book, you can literally have a book as long as you want,
Right.
and have it and have the person be totally willing to read through all of it, provided it's engaging enough. But with
Right.
a movie, you kind of got to get the show rolling.
Right. And, two things I want to add, and we're getting ahead of ourselves in a great way. Number one is, when I say psychology, I don't mean Robert is sitting here thinking about something important. Okay. What I mean is, characters exist in the world and they do stuff, and that all of those little moments tell us things. And by noticing how we act in the world, and sometimes it's big dialogues, but like what we get on TV, I'm really mad at TV right now, because TV gives us the impression that we can say something important to people and they will believe it for the rest of their lives. Right? Like, you have a great speech. And then they're like, oh yeah, I see the world totally differently now. It doesn't usually work that way, that everything is sort of big and dramatic and explosive. We work out the world by how we decide to deal with the person who is asking for change. We explore the world by dealing with the person who gives us a dirty look when we're wearing a mask. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we sit there and we ruminate about this for 10 pages, but when we're talking about simple details, I'm talking about being able to precisely and vividly notice the small things in the world that reveal some of these larger things. Does that make sense to people? I'm not gonna like give you Fs if it's not like all psychology or all this or all that. It's guidelines. Okay.
Also notice that like with a lot of TV, the characters can kind of fall into what I'm calling the role model syndrome, where the characters are expected to act like how they expect the audience to behave.
Mm-hmm.
So like the character acts as a role model. So like, let's say this one character does something wrong and then apologizes for it, but then character B immediately forgives them. It's kind of going like, hey, if someone apologizes for something, you should forgive them.
Right.
Or like, you should like explain that you need time. It's not going like what could really happen. It's going for like more for of like this is what should happen,
Right.
rather than this is what would happen, judging by their own characters'
Right.
personalities.
Well, let's talk about that. But before we talk about that, are there any questions that are, we're already getting into the stuff of writing, right? Are there any logistics questions? Because I want to go in this direction. In fact, I was planning on going in this direction. Shannon,
So we
yes.
will have-
Yes.
Sorry.
No, I was just responding to, it's funny, now we're in a world where we're responding to each other visually, but also the chat room. So everything's happening at once. So yes, that would be an example. Although in your example, I would always want to know if a character is presented with a choice. The most interesting thing is always the third thing. The not no, the not yes, the interesting thing. Kenzie, I am listening.
Oh, I was just gonna double check that we always have an exercise due on Monday at 3:30, correct?
Yes. So
Got it.
all deliverables, almost always, I think 99% of the time, are due Mondays and Fridays right before class. That way we can talk about them either in class or in our sessions. So yes, and they're always 3:30. The only exception is the days in which, like week 7, I believe, when your story is due, I push deliverables back to Wednesday because your main deliverable is due on Monday. And that should all be in checklists. Have you used checklists before in my courses?
I've never used my courses before, but I find it so helpful. I was just on it last night and it was very helpful.
I agree.
I've never used checklists before and they're a pain, but I'm hoping that they're useful to you. We will see how that goes. Did that answer your question, Kenzie?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, other logistics. No, Devin, it's always been hidden, this checklist thing. All right, I'm gonna share my screen for a second. We've got 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Oh gosh. Robert, share screen, click the button, get to the thing. Okay, so theoretically right now you should see a blank Word document, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll notice that, you know, one of the things that I'll be trying to get us to think about is writing, you know, writing stories not where we have a set idea of what they're supposed to do, but that language and stories can do like millions of different things to us, and that there's a kind of toolbox when we're writing of effects, not like effects like Photoshop filters, but literature can do different things to different people and many, many different things. So I want to get a list very quickly of the things that literature can do, so that you can think about this when you're writing in a certain way. Most of us, when we're pressed on this, have fairly thin ideas about what literature can or even should do. This is a great transition from what Anonymous Alligator was saying, which is that in some TV shows, there's kind of a, what would you call it? Like a, this is what you should do. A moral imperative, right? This is something literature can do, but some of you may say, well, that's not the only thing literature can do, and some people might be like, that's all it should do. And that's gonna provide very different kinds of writing. So my question to you is, what is the big list of things, stories, literature, well, let's call it stories for now, can do to us as readers? Shout stuff out to me.
Give a new perspective.
Okay, what do you mean by new perspective? That's abstract.
The character has, you know, the reader thinks a certain way, the author thinks another different way, so they're just like, hey, let's just take this character who thinks in a third direction, and then let's just see like what happens with that.
Okay, new way of thinking. Question, if I as an author think a certain way, do my characters think that way too?
Yes.
That can happen. That can happen. It's just, it just mainly happens if, because like, I'll use myself as an example when I'm writing. I more often than not just have my characters do things because I'm just like, well, this is obviously the logical conclusion. Like they need to do the thing, then do the thing. But what I'm like missing is that like there might be reasons or like different subtle elements that might be holding the character back.
Right. Okay.
So there's definitely that bias, but it's not impossible to overcome that bias.
I feel like if your characters are well developed enough, you can start thinking the way that you think that they would think. Like their circumstances also change the way they think. So if there are well developed characters, I think that writers can have multiple viewpoints.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that most of the stories and great books we have always have multiple viewpoints. They're not always viewpoints. They can be really complicated. You know, if you think about us, we are these big, irrational, shifting sets of beliefs, right? Why is it that we think that characters have to do the same thing all the time? So imagining that characters can change is really important. But let's get back. So this is something, you know, notice that already we've had some differences of agreement or differences in terms of what, you know, what a viewpoint is. Are we writing to express viewpoints, or can we write for different reasons? What else do we write for?
To include more people in the narrative.
Okay, so include more people in the narrative. When you say more people, what does that mean?
I mean, both the audience and also the characters within the book are each in a different way participating in the author's narrative for whatever the story is telling. If it's a fiction, like especially if it's fiction, then whatever kind of exposure they may have had before, it's a way of exposing them to something different or thinking a different way.
Great. So one thing that seems really clear here is that every time we write, we are exposing a reader to something that is not them. Does that make sense? A different way of seeing the world, a different way. It may confirm things. All right, trick question. Are characters people?
No.
Yes.
I don't think that's a trick question at all. I think they're
characters are
entirely
people too.
Depends on the story.
Words are dumb.
All right, that's facts. Depending on the story, characters can be people, but in my mind, like
Yeah.
every character
could
is
be
like a
dogs.
weird reflection of yourself. You could be dogs, you could be dog people in your own character, but I think they are people in the same way that you yourself as a person, and you are enacting each of these people when you create them. So
Well,
I think
I'm
they got their own substance.
thinking,
With- I mean-
I'm thinking more of like the story itself, like in a fairy tale. You know,
Mhm.
those like half-page long fairy tales. There aren't really much. There isn't really much room for like characterization in there, as rather than like looking at something
Right.
much longer.
Okay.
Well,
I'm
I
asking.
think-
I'm asking a harder question, which is when you read a story, are you looking at a person?
No.
Yes.
I mean,
Not in
yes.
the- within that fabricated universe, you are. Like obviously
Yes,
they don't
they-
exist.
those
but
those
story,
characters exist within the universe, though.
I
It's
don't
not
think
like
a
created
character
universe.
needs length to have depth.
Words on a
and
page,
then
right?
Notice,
I mean-
just notice how much, like even these very simple questions become complicated. I'm going to give what's the right answer because I'm a teacher and I'm always right. Which is characters are not people.
Yes.
But for a different reason. Characters are words on a page.
Yes.
Characters are representations of people that are exhibited through language. The same way we
Yes.
might say that characters are representations of people exhibited through a visual space, and that the ways that we have represented people over time have changed. Okay, so this is all about the how of the words and not that they are people in a certain way. Now we can quibble about this. I saw a hand, I think it was you, Aaron.
Yeah. So then, would you consider any characters that are part of any role-playing games not as people, even though they're played by people, and
That's
they
a
are absolute expressions of,
Yeah.
they exist in the fictional world. The fictional world exists, and they meet NPCs,
Yep.
and they themselves interact with them as people do.
Yep. I think that RPGs, well, not RPGs, sorry. Yeah, I think RPGs blur the line of that because you have a physical space there. But imagine a spectrum here. Okay, so first things first, what I'm saying is that none of these things are really people. They are all expressions of representations of how people function in different media, and that the media is specific here. So maybe, Aaron, you have a spectrum, and on that spectrum are people playing RPGs, but there's a further space in that spectrum where your people are actually role-playing this stuff, right? They're people, but they're not people. But when I'm talking just about, the reason I'm bringing this up is because the words, what you're playing with is not building people, it's building words, right? I want you to focus on the words here and how they are done. That's the count. But we have 10 minutes. Let's go back. What can literature do? Be really simple here.
Fire.
What? Fire?
Inspire.
Oh, inspire. But inspire in what ways?
Story.
Well, in ways that, well, let me think for a second. Well, for one, back when I was at MCC back in like 2012, I based my entire personage around one character in one book for about a semester because this is the way I want to live. I want to live like this character. I mean, that's not exactly the best example, but it's the first one that pops into my head.
Okay. But let's go back. I want you to pin down inspire, and anybody can do this. When you're inspired, are you feeling? Are you thinking? Are you, okay, so.
It doesn't even have to be as like,
Feeling, thinking, all that stuff.
Okay, well, I want to write this down because this is really important. You're provoking emotional responses. Fine, great. You're also provoking intellectual labor, right? Intellectual pursuits, philosophy. All of these things are perfectly great and wonderful things, and the best stories probably combine these in interesting ways. Is it okay to write an amazing story where the emotional response is boredom?
Yes.
Okay, what would that look like?
It would be pretty boring, but you could write a story about working in a toll booth where every page is the same exact, story with different cars and license plates. But at the end of the book, you will have experienced being in a toll booth.
Right. So is there something valuable in learning about another representation of a person's experience, even if it is not necessarily a positive or pleasurable thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Other thoughts on that?
Yes, story can be used to illustrate a point in a way that I've yet to find another medium be able to. That example, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, is something that I couldn't do in any other way other than by writing a story or telling a story.
Yeah.
That you shouldn't, do. I can't even describe it because I would just have to tell the story. It is the point. The story itself is the illustration of what you're trying to convey.
Is there value in writing stories in which uncomfortable or painful things happen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes. Is there value in showing perspectives that that are not often written about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there value in? Could you imagine a story in which nothing really happens, but the language is so beautiful that it transports you in some way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That can happen.
Okay, so these are trick questions in a certain way, but I want you to, just think that the field of language is really, really open in terms of what it can do to another person. And every time somebody reads something that you write, the words are transforming them on a line by line level. Your job is to make that, is not necessarily to tell them how to do that, but to make whatever the effect is powerful and visible, even if that power is the power of boredom or, I don't know exactly what. What else? I mean, let's see. Keep talking. We got 2 or 3 more minutes before I want to wrap it up. Are there other things, why else might, like, when you think about the books you love most, why do you love them the most?
I
don't
tend
know,
to read
in my
books that.
experience.
Yeah, go on.
Wait, who's talking?
You are.
I can go for it.
Okay.
Ryan, you hold off.
I don't know. In my experience, writing has allowed for me to take a split-second moment, just like a brief encounter.
Great.
But then you dive deeper into it. Like when I was telling earlier about how I would deal with people who didn't want to wear masks. That encounter at times wouldn't last more than a minute or 2 minutes.
Right.
But you could make a whole story out of that, and delving into the either party's perspective, delving into why they feel that way, delving into the situation, how it affected people around them.
Good.
It's a short moment that can be opened up in a much bigger way through writing.
Yep. So it doesn't have to be, and I'm not looking for you to write things that are monumental. What did you say that again, Shannon? A short thing or a small thing?
Just a brief split-second moment
that opens up in meaningful ways. Does that sound right? It also allows you said, to play with time, which allows a narrator to bring things together that are seemingly disparate, right? It allows people to bring multiple perspectives together. Ryan.
I was going to bring up that I like to read books that kind of hurt my head. Like, for example, books that aren't exactly linear, like Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, or really anything Pynchon writes. Because I think it's fun for me to try and connect where the story leaves off and maybe where it is tangential to other parts of their, what some would call plot. So I think it's fun to kind of do that mental exercise, for me at least.
Yeah, and we will talk, this is hard, we will talk at the end of the semester about, more sort of what I'm going to call postmodern strategies, things that, somebody like a Pynchon or a Vonnegut would do, especially in terms of, writers that are aware that they're writing, right? Here's a big question to you. Most older writing tends to not be aware that it's writing itself. Does everybody know 19th century paintings where the goal of the painting was for you to not believe that it was a painting?
Yeah.
And yet, for much writing, we believe that any writing that it calls attention to itself as artifice is bad. I don't think that's true at all, but that's, part of what Ryan's pointing to is authors who are always reminding us that the words are words on a page first. This is super, and I hope this gives you an idea of all the kinds of things that we can tap into. There's more, of course. We've got 2 minutes left. Did anybody raise their hand that I didn't see or does anybody want to have last words on our first Friday?
I actually have something. It kind of relates to the multiple viewpoints, but also you can just literature can teach you something new or go greater in depth, because if some character or even just the author understands a concept better than you do, they can express that through their words to the point where you understand that concept better.
Yep. Great. And, you know, maybe I will take most of the last word here. There's two things that are important about that last statement. One is teaching you something new doesn't have to be a thing. It doesn't have to be a moral imperative. It doesn't have to be math. What I'm looking for when I'm reading stuff is something that teaches me a way of being in the world, or a way of, like, I want to know how brains work. Do we think our brains all work the same way? What interests me is that I only have one brain to work with, and I don't even know that one very well. And that we don't know each other, you know, we don't know it well, but that everybody is wired differently, and they go from subject to subject differently. Like, I'm a real associative thinker. I want to learn how other people's brains and hearts and whatever you want to call them work. And that to me is, when I'm talking about teaching something new, that's part of what I'm looking for, is that kind of like, wow, I never thought of that. So it can be something specific like a moral position, but it can also just be how we model the world. Do I have any synesthetic people here? No. Shannon's like, what's synesthesia?
I don't have synesthesia exactly, but I have like a handful of similar symptoms.
Yeah.
I describe words as tasting like stuff a lot.
Yep.
But that's about it, and it's not as direct as other people with synesthesia.
No, but it's that I'm eager to see what that looks like on paper, for example. You know, to me, it's an egg can taste salty, but it's more interesting. I'm getting this wrong, Elle, so just forgive me for this. You know, an egg can taste salty, but an egg can also taste blue.
Yeah, no, for me, it's like I have words that taste good to say, for lack of a better word, but I'm not synesthetic in the way that like it tastes sweet. It just
Right.
like feels good.
Great. Okay, maybe somebody else wants the last word here? Is everybody too shy? Okay.
Thank you for putting together this course with all of this that's going on.
Well, yeah, thank you for being here. It's awesome. Without you, there is no me. Can I say you complete me? Can I say that? Okay. That might be too much for
that might be too personal.
That might be too personal. All right, so you have your assignments for exercise 2, which is due on Monday, and everything you need to do for then. I'm recording this. It's always being recorded for people who can't make it. I will figure out a way to put that up as soon as I can. Captioning might be a pain for this. I'm not sure how captioning is going to work for this. I apologize. I didn't really want to talk about the Adichie too much, but I want you to keep it in the back of your heads the whole time. And I think I will see some of you on Monday. All right. Have a really good weekend, everybody. One last thing. For those of you, this is true for everybody, but specifically for those of you who have not taken creative writing classes, creative writing exercises can be a rabbit hole of unending proportions. So my goal is not to have you write for 30 hours, right? I want you to treat this with as much time as you would treat any other class. And if things are incomplete in a certain way, or they're a draft that you need to work on later, that's fine, right? I do not want you to super crazy overdo it to the extent of, you know, I know you have majors elsewhere. So, you know, it's okay if things are in process. All of our writing is in process. It's always going to be in process. Clear?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Have a really good weekend, everybody. I'm going to go eat some breakfast. And I will see some of you on Monday.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Bye.
I've got 2 left.